Hey everybody, this is Paul. I want to welcome you back to the Mysterious Huntsman Show. And tonight I have a special guest on. I have author and UFO researcher Paige with us tonight. And I just want to give a really quick intro for her, which like she needs no introduction, but just real quick. Just want to bring her in here and just say Katie is an author, researcher, investigator of high strangeness, the director of Rocky Mountain Ranch Research, a former MUFON director of Colorado, a key figure in preserving historical UFO cases through Project Aquarius. Her work has taken her anomalous investigations to national television and radio, and tonight I'm super excited to hear what she really thinks is going on. Katie, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
I heard you a few weeks ago. I just recently discovered, I think it's Beyond Contact with Coast to Coast, or one of their shows that they put out. And I heard you and I started listening to your podcast on other shows. And your story is incredible to me, which I think I told you earlier, I've always been interested in this topic. But you started talking about things that were like hitting close to home to me and where things I've researched my entire life.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey for me years ago. Well, it actually for me started, I got really addicted to the show Ghost Hunters. And that kind of reopened because many of us do, we go through life and we get married, we raise families. I raised 5 kids and, worked and did all the things you do as an adult. And then those questions really never left me. Like I've always had paranormal things happen to me throughout my life. My mom actually started dating a gentleman. She was a computer operator for United Airlines here in Colorado in the Denver Tech Center, and started dating a gentleman who owned a 60-acre ranch property in Elbert County, Colorado. And this was the year 1975. I was, during those years, I'm 9, 10, 11 years old. And things started happening on this ranch right away. We were threatened and warned really never to talk about what was happening out there. So my older sister, my mom, and I never knew anybody knew anything about the ranch property or what was happening out there. So it was always kind of this thing that we all shoved deep down inside. 1975 out here in Elbert County, Colorado was the year Linda Moulton Howe got her start as an investigative journalist out there in Elbert County with the rash of animal mutilations. So fast forward in, I think it was 2012, I was watching a documentary and just happened to see, learned about MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And so I did all the testing, studied, and went right in as a field investigator because I wanted to learn. And it's a great place for people to learn if you're interested in researching UFOs and things. And one day I just happened to pick up this book right here, Hunt for the Skinwalker. And
I
at
know
the
it
time,
well.
it didn't have a TV show or anything at the time. So it was famous, but not as famous as it is today. And I read the back cover and I'm like, wow, that sounds a lot like the ranch of my childhood, And I started reading the book, and in this book is a chapter called Other Hotspots. And they start talking about a ranch in Colorado. And because I knew the strange family dynamic and the names, because they changed the names, they used pseudonyms, but they were very close to the original names. I'm like, this has to be the ranch. So in this book, it talks about Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD, who was a psychologist out of Laramie, Wyoming. Thankfully for me, well, he's old school. I wrote him a letter. He wrote me back right before Christmas and said, yep, this is the ranch. And by that next weekend, I was in Laramie going through all the files. So that's kind of how it started for me. And it's been just this rabbit hole ever since, because for me, the question, Paul, was always how much was Black access military projects and how much of this phenomena is kind of created by man and how much of it was actual, paranormal, unexplained phenomenon. And it's been trying to sort out that tangled web ever since,
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's funny you brought up the book. I bought that same book and read it through and through. And I know that you well, I'll let you go into it later. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but you kind of you have some things happening that predates Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, that's what's amazing about this. And, the height of the activity out there was from 1973. Actually, it started a lot of the newspaper articles. I entered in 75 to 78. So one of my very first questions I had was, is it still active out there? Because this area out there in Elbert County, it's, we have the Palmer Divide, which is interesting. And that's something I really looked into and researched was, what do these high strangeness locations have in common? Not only Skinwalker Ranch and the Rocky Mountain Ranch, but you have, Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, Ohio, Pennsylvania's has a lot of high strangeness, Marley Woods in Missouri. And now, I've found other spots globally, talking to Paul Sinclair in the UK and others. And I'm like, what do they have in common? Well, Elbert County says we have the Palmer Divide, which is very similar to the Uinta Basin. So,
Okay.
in researching these things, it became very clear to me that yes, a lot of these things had in common, but we did predate the Skinwalker Ranch, because this was in the 70s, but it's still occurring today. And that's one thing that doing the History Channel's Beyond Skinwalker kind of opened up that door for me to really get to know some of the locals and things like that, to really learn what's still happening out there to this day. It really has never reached the height of the mid to late 70s, though, because they were getting like mutilations almost daily of, cow and horse. I even found newspaper articles about dog and other things like that. So it was like the town, especially the town of Kiowa, was on high alert during this time.
Yeah, I saw, doing my own research into that area. I was familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, but looking back over, the ranch you were talking about, was it called Clearview originally, or
It was called Clearview, yeah, and that was really cool. So John Schuessler, who is here locally in Colorado, he's one of the founding fathers of the Mutual UFO Network. And when he learned of my and the connection to the ranch there, I didn't live on the ranch full time, by the way. We would visit the ranch on the weekends, or we'd go to the ranch sometimes during the week, because my mom's boyfriend had, he had three sons. The two younger ones lived with us at our home, which was about 45 minutes away, so they can attend the large school district, which was at the Cherry Creek School District. It's like one of the best districts in the state. And of course, the little school in Kiowa had like a graduating class of like four. So for the boys, they had better opportunities going to Cherry Creek High School. So, we would bring the boys back and forth to visit their mother and things like that. On the weekends and during the week. But yeah, so John Schuessler bestowed upon me the original briefing document. From that and all the original files in Laramie through Dr. Sprinkle, I've been able to, it just gave me a lot of leads, I guess is the best way to put it, different areas I wanted to reach out and investigate.
yeah, for sure. And, um, what with everything going on, it seems like a lot of it happens in the West. I know I've been to, Joshua Tree and some other areas out there. There's a lot of, there's a lot of anomalous things that just happen, and you can almost feel the different energy out there in the areas. But do you think there's something to do with the the, the topography of the geology, or the limestone, the quartz, the granite? Does anything have anything to do with like, any kind of magnetic anomalous things?
Yeah, you just said it, Paul. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Looking at, yeah, if you look at the National Magnetic Anomaly Map, so you can search that online. And if you go to these high strangeness locations, the highest magnetic areas will be a very light, like pink shade color. And Rocky Mountain Ranch is the highest you can get. So is Skinwalker. So is like all of the Sedona area. It's really highly magnetic. So 90% or so of these locations do ping the charts of being highly magnetic. Almost all of them have either aquifers, rivers, streams, or a combination there and above. So right where the Rocky Mountain Ranch sits, actually two of the main aquifers come together. So, and they have different water tables. So the Denver and the Dawson. And so I wonder about, having aquifers underneath, if it opens tunnels and canyons and crevices from the water flow underground. Then of course the Elbert County area, that was a very nomadic place for the Native Americans for their hunting grounds. So we had all sorts of different tribes, from the Ute to the Pawnee, Cheyenne, Comanche, Arapaho, Iowa. And so, we've heard the folklore of the Skinwalker Ranch with the Ute and the Cheyenne and different legends like that. So we definitely have that at Elbert County. in Elbert County as well. And then you mentioned it. You mentioned the quartz, the limestone, and that. So I feel like it's almost like this. If you take a big stew pot and put it on the stove, and you have all the right elements, I think what it does is it does either it attracts the phenomena, or it allows us as humans to interact with the phenomena. It's almost like tuning the dial just to a certain way. So in the UK or in Scotland, I learned the term thin spot, and it
Hmm.
creates this kind of a thinner doorway to interact with the phenomena. And I believe that's the case at the Rocky Mountain Ranch.
Okay, and when you mentioned thin spot, that's probably similar to like thinning the veil, maybe between.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay,
exactly. Yeah, I just
and
learned that one myself too. I'm like, oh
oh
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, for sure. And I know that even over the UK, or some of the stories I've heard about in the UK, you'll hear about ley lines. And then I started hearing about ley lines here, and they connect pretty much all over the globe. Um, do you think that any of the ley lines run through your area, or even hits the hot spots for the other areas? Do you think that's anything to that?
Yeah, we're really close, and of course, I did that as well. You get out the Google Maps, and I'm putting pins, across the country, and it's really interesting from like the Skinwalker to Rocky Mountain Ranch to Ohio Pile, Pennsylvania, who actually they had a very similar case as Rocky Mountain Ranch. It's almost like this straight line across the country. I'm like,
Wow.
okay, there might be a little something to that as well. You have the outliers that kind of fall off here and there, but definitely that whole Midwest section, at least when it comes to the animal mutilations, it's really interesting how that runs through the center of our country. And I know, for a long time, I didn't really want to get too deep into the woods with the animal mutilations. I felt like we have other experts that are been handling that for decades, and let them do the work. But I couldn't stay away from it forever because it's still occurring a little bit to this day. So I have, locals now that are having animal mutilations that are reaching out to me as well. But I don't know. Chuck, no, it was Chris O'Brien, and we just recently lost Christopher O'Brien, but on his website, and I'm pretty sure you could still go to it, but he did a lot of work with like the Midwest and what may be causing, if it is military doing any of the animal mutilations? Are they looking at nuclear fallout, or testing the groundwater or things like that? And certainly he marked all those locations on the map, and they do correspond. So there may be something to that.
Yeah, and someone asked me a while back, a good friend of mine, we were talking about the cattle mutilation thing, and he's like, "You would think that the government or the military could buy their own cattle and do it without having to hurt all the farmers out there." It was kind of funny, but it made sense.
No, it
Uh,
makes sense, and that's a good point because the Rocky Mountain Ranch in my childhood, it sat vacant for 7 to 12 years is what the report said. And so, here's this piece of land that sat vacant. If the military wanted that, they could have just bought it,
sure.
However, things that I learned outside of that. So, before I get ahead of myself, let's talk a little bit about some of the first things that were reported out there. Some of the very first things that they reported were these hums and bangs. A lot of the bangs sounded like it was coming from underground, but there was nothing that would cause that. So, what we learned through the years, though, with the strange hum sounds is when the hum sounds picked up, the activity would heighten. So that was one of the very first reports. And then, of course, we always, the mutilations that occurred on the property that happened. But then from there, it gets really wild. And something I learned, so there's a mysterious gentleman by the name of John Duke, and he claimed to be Air Defense Command. He claimed to come out of San Francisco, and there's evidence and documents that we uncovered in the files that they talked about soldiers being on the ranch from Fort Carson. They talked about NORAD and the Air Force Academy being aware of the property. And I flew to Florida and actually interviewed the widow, Jean, and the son of the undersheriff that was the sheriff there in Elbert County at the time. And he basically was told and worked with higher ups at the Air Force Academy to downplay the mutilations. Then, of course, we had the mysterious choppers. So, through my research, I feel like if they were, using the Rocky Mountain Ranch for some black access projects, and we'll get into some that I think might have been going on there at the time, it would make sense that they would maybe use family members or wanted people to move on to do the experiments on. And I know this because in the reports, they talk about having vagrants come visit the land, which is interesting. And a couple of years ago, I did an interview with a widow and a daughter of a former CIA who passed away. And they actually, they owned a lot of property over the Dulce base. They had a second home in the San Luis Valley. But her father was involved in a program which they experimented with what they called FM, freaking magic, which was a combination of LSD and other hallucinogens. So if John Duke, who lived on the property, was part of that program, some of these more outlandish, I don't know if you've ever read the Clearview report, but they talk about meeting aliens and seeing landed craft and cryptid reports. And some of them, like these strange boxes and other things like that, it's like, whoa, that's pretty intense, right? Landed craft, seeing extraterrestrials and Bigfoot, or I call them Sasquatch, that my mom called them white fuzzies because they were like gray and white, but, banging on the house, and this mysterious box where the Sasquatch was brought to his knees. Was all of this a big MK Ultra mind control? And the reason I went there is because one of the reports said Warren, his last name was redacted out, visits the ranch from Fort Carson. So number one, why do we have a soldier there from Fort Carson? It said he went behind the ranch house, felt something take over his mind, made him walk towards the woods, would release him, he would run back to the ranch house, and this did this to him 5 times. So that's in the reports that's documented out there. And it makes me wonder, these strange, mysterious boxes that were out there that I witnessed, the undersheriff Bill Wall witnessed it. Are those connected to some of these projects? I don't know, but it's a big question mark for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I, I did, I do know a little bit about your story and being younger out there. Did you ever notice? I mean, don't let me rush ahead, but did you ever notice when you were the times that you were visiting out there and younger? Did you ever notice any, people that just didn't belong just would come visit, or maybe just show up and uh, look around, poke around, and then leave? Or did you ever, like, maybe it could have been outside military or outside black ops?
Yeah, all the time. And the whole situation is so weird, Paul, because here's the dealio. This is the 70s, I know, but the gentleman my mom was dating, she was dating the John Duke, right, who claimed to be Air Defense Command, but Jack and Betty never divorced. So like, it's really strange, how all that went down. And yes, they were always and even in the reports, there were all sorts of people in and out on that property. Um, I always felt, as a little kid, I always felt watched, um, and just kind of uncomfortable. Like even the 3 years, and Jack lived with us for those 3 years. He never really got close to me or my sister. The situation was very bizarre. And my sister and I talk about it all the time. Like, what was that? And then another clue that I just recently came across, the scariest night on the ranch property. And this is, if you watch the series Beyond Skinwalker, and I do that radio experiment, this is why they did this. So the scariest night for my mom, my sister, and I, it was the boys' mother, and her name was Betty. All the adults now are passed, so I'm comfortable at least giving their first names. So Betty had a birthday, and we were all there to celebrate her birthday. The adults were in the front room of the ranch, playing board games and listening to music. And I just remember me and my sister and the 3 boys hanging out in the boys' bedroom in the back of the ranch house. And all of a sudden that hum started up. Right. And as soon as that hum starts, we all knew, like, uh-oh, and then all the power in the house goes out, and the brightest light, it's like brighter than the sun out the boys' window. So everybody's like flashlights, freaking out. And it was at that time that weird disembodied electrical sounding voice, and it's burned into my memory and my sister's as well. But the reason I know what it says verbatim is because it's in the report. So when I got the report and I'm reading the report, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. And I'm on the phone with my sister. You're not going to believe this. And it's basically, you know, that attention, we have allowed you to remain. We have interfered with your lives very little. Do not cause us to take action which you will regret. Your friends, which was me, my mom, my sister, will be instructed to remain silent concerning us. Scared the hell out of us. So my mom took that very seriously. So, you know, Katie, don't talk about what's going on out there. You don't tell your friends. You don't say anything. Same with my sister. But that night, so we left, we get home. I get into the door. We had a 2-story house. I walk into the door. I believe that at that time I'm 10 years old. And I walk into the house. I fall to the ground and I couldn't speak. And my mom and my sister are yelling at me, what did you eat? What did you eat? And I just remember trying to say peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I couldn't speak. And so finally, and that lasted maybe a few minutes, I finally come to, they take me up to my room, and I got the full blown tunnel vision, migraine headaches where you're vomiting, that whole thing. And it really became serious for me after that night. I was missing a lot of school. I was getting these severe migraine headaches constantly. So a gentleman approaches my mom at work and shows her a newspaper article and says, Katie needs to go to this. It's in the Denver Tech Center, which is also weird. It was only 2 buildings away from where my mom worked as a computer operator for United. And it was called the Twilight Learners Biofeedback Program. And I just recently made this connection because all this time, and I still have my tapes. So these were my cassette tapes when I was a kid. Okay. And
Wow.
this was the biofeedback program I was put into during the ranch years to get a handle on my migraines. But they were created by this Thomas H. Badinsky. So I started, thanks to ChatGPT and Grok now, right? It can dig a lot deeper than how I could have done it years ago. So I searched Thomas H. Badinsky. I come to find out that Thomas H. Badinsky is a navigational engineer out of Area 51 and worked on the SR-71 Blackbird. And you can Google Thomas H. Badinsky biofeedback. There's an old documentary or a show about it from the late 1970s where they're interviewing Thomas H. Badinsky. At the end of that little film, I think it's an hour long, it's kind of interesting to watch. They have a little boy on there exactly hooked up to the stuff I was hooked up on. So they put little things on your fingers to test your temperature of your body, and then these things on your head, and you have earphones on, and they try to keep you in a theta state, okay, that twilight state, and it's a deep relaxed state to get a handle on your migraines, right? It constricts your blood vessels. And so that's all this time, that's what thought I was doing in that program for a little over a year. But in the video, they have this little boy named Kevin. And with Kevin, they're going, Kevin, can you make the rocket go up? Can you make the rocket land? And this is an navigational engineer out of Area 51. That begs the question, were they reverse engineering craft, couldn't figure out how to navigate them? And were they looking at, different things like remote viewing? I know for me, and for me, this is an important piece of the puzzle because my sister, she's 6 years older, and the phenomena affected us very differently. And I could never understand why that was. Was it interest? Was it because she didn't want to really dig down deep? I had a lot of the hitchhiker stuff happen to me throughout my life, and she did not. And so I always wondered why that was. And it could be because of this training, because when you disassociate or you're trained to be in a theta state, like I lucid dream all the time, I can go under hypnosis very easily because I had this formal training, and that could be the difference. But I find it fascinating that this also occurred during the ranch years. And could it have anything to do with that military Black Axis project? Now, that disembodied electrical voice, I don't think it's extraterrestrial in nature. I was kind of researching and just different Black Axis projects, and what I learned was there's a thing called plasma ball technology. So if they were experimenting with plasma ball technology out there in Elbert County, which would make sense because Colorado Springs, the Black Forest, and where Elbert County is, we're really close to, Air Force Academy, Camp Carson, Butte. It's very military.
Mhm.
But what plasma ball technology is it's this electrical sounding voice. It sounds just like the voice I heard actually, and it pipes it out into the you know battlefield. So it protects soldiers and the voice gets piped out into the field. And that's when I heard that on, these videos that I found, I'm like, that's what that sounded like, that disembodied electrical voice. So I have come to the conclusion that at least part of what was occurring out there was Black Axis military projects, but it doesn't answer for the rest of it. Doesn't answer for a lot of the hitchhiker stuff, the paranormal stuff, the cryptid stuff, and these things that kind of have attached to me no matter where I go, which they really talk about in the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, this
Yeah.
hitchhiker phenomenon. And I just recently kind of latched on to that because for my whole life, I compartmentalized all those things. Like, yeah, my house over there was haunted and it had ghosts. And, Sasquatch is something different. And, UFOs are something different. But I really believe that they're all interconnected.
Yeah. And I should have been taking notes because I have 100 questions. Uh, yeah, if I can process this for a second. So what you're talking about, have you heard of the gateway experiments or the gateway
Yeah.
tapes?
Oh, that's the other piece of this. So in researching Thomas H. Bodinsky and the Twilight Learners, they were connected to, or they were the forerunners of the Monroe
Monroe,
Institute,
yeah.
the Menninger Foundation, and the Gateway Project. And this is how I came to find this. So I have a podcast called The Trifecta on Wednesday nights live, although this Wednesday night, we're not, that's a whole other story. But anyway, most Wednesday nights live. But I had a guest on there. And actually, no, it was on UAP Studies where I'm a co-host. We had a guest and they started talking about the Gateway tapes. And I'm like, ooh, I want to kind of learn about that. So, I found on YouTube some free Gateway tapes and I put on the headphones and I started the Gateway training. And it was the third session into that. And it was almost verbatim exact. It was this.
Okay. I was
I'm like,
wondering.
oh, this is my biofeedback. And that's how it all started unraveling, is listening to the Gateway. And then I find out they were the forerunners. They worked with Monroe. They worked with Menninger.
Wow.
So it's all connected. And the fact that that was happening while I was on the ranch, I thought, well, that says to me there's something to that. And then the other piece to that, I have a half brother. His name was Gary. He's passed away, but Gary was during those years right before the ranch. And I feel like this might be how our family was targeted. My brother was an arsonist. So he burnt down our house in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin while my mom was pregnant with me. Then we moved to Colorado in 1970. In 1973, he took gas before the week before he axed up all the furniture in our house. So I came home from elementary school with an axe in the house, but that next week he torched our house. And I can remember being on the swing set in my elementary school and I saw a house on fire in the distance and it was our house. So after that, my brother obviously was arrested, thrown in jail, and ultimately he was put into the Pueblo State Hospital. Um, for borderline personality and other mental things. So he was institutionalized basically the rest of his life. And I know in researching these Black Access projects and MK Ultra, they used a lot of these people that were institutionalized as guinea pigs or test subjects. I feel like my half brother might have been a victim to that. I mean, he was first seen in the state hospitals in Chicago. So I'm thinking that happened in 73. 2 years later, here we are on the ranch. My mother, who went through a lot of trauma, divorces my father right after the father. I was being pulled out all the time at my elementary school for what I thought was, you know, um, your parents are divorcing. You just went through this fire thing. Plus, they said, you have dyslexia and some learning disabilities. So every week I was being pulled out and being tested all the time. And I wonder if that wasn't part of this program, you know, if that's how we got targeted and my mom got targeted, and then that we stayed together for those 3 years, or my mom and Jack did, and then all of a sudden, everything falls apart and um, that whole program ended. So part of me feels like we were unwitting subjects in some covert operations. And talking to other people now, and that's why these podcasts are so important, because I believe there were hundreds, if not thousands, of other children and families put into these programs without their knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. And still so many questions, but I'm gonna hold back. Was your brother older or younger than you?
A lot older. Yeah. Yeah. He was, yeah, he was a lot older.
Okay. So, but I mean, and I'm not comparing him to Charles Manson by any means, but it's even recorded that Charles Manson was, while he was institutionalized, he was, he had his own tests, he had his own thing. I think the whole MK Ultra thing, like, probably took a big turn with him because he was, while he was in there, I forget the guy's name. Uh, it
I
escapes me
know who
now,
you're
but
talking about. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I can't think of his name, but he would come visit him. He played a big role in a lot of the Ultra stuff, and I know it seems like that throughout the years, and people out there can Google this if they want to, or Chat GPT or whatever. You can look up released CIA files where they were working on the mind control and trying to make people into perfect soldiers or remote viewers, but they were taking them from an early age, and especially ones that seemed to be gifted. And that's what they were doing. I think in a lot of the schools, they were like seeing who had the gifts, who was more prone or susceptible to having their uh, talents, I guess, heightened through, like you're talking about, the theta waves, or even the binaural beats, the alpha, theta, beta waves, just doing a lot of things, a lot of tones. It's Yeah, my mind's just like racing right now. But there are so many similarities with uh, kids being taken at a younger age, or even groomed, I guess. And it seems like that a lot of the parents, or even maybe the extended family, were military, or they were high up
I
in
agree.
intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that seems to be a huge pattern across the board. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
there's a
100%, and I learned through my this is the other crazy so I was born in Illinois, but I come to find out my grandfather, who was Navy and a Mason, he had a sighting over Lake Como in Wisconsin of an oblong-shaped craft investigated by J. Allen Hynek. Now, this was before I was born, in the early '60s. Then my mom would talk about going from our home in Illinois at the time back and forth to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, in a little town across the border in Illinois called Richmond. We pulled she had a '66 Buick, and she pulls the Buick over, and she said it was hovering off the ground, and it was another oblong shaped craft just hovering there. And the story, how you always have those stories at Thanksgiving or whatever. She said I was little at the time, maybe not even 2 years old. And she said after she had pulled the car over to witness this, and we get back onto the road to go back to our home, she said I was like catatonic, and the lines in the middle of the road, I was like hypnotized, just. And she was like, Katie had to shake me to come back to. So that predates even coming to Colorado. And in a lot of the cases that I've researched throughout all these years, I have noticed the same thing. A military connection in families, which would make sense. If I was an extraterrestrial and visiting another planet, I might want to keep an eye on the families that are connected to the weapons, the military. And interestingly enough, the two most common are Navy and Air Force. I will sometimes get Army and sometimes get Marine, but it's almost a joke where you're like, oh, Navy, oh, Air Force. So there's definitely a connection there, for sure. And so it makes me wonder where and when. Like I said, my brother, he's much older than I, and I will send the letter that he left in the fire. I still have it. The original letter, and I'll
wow.
send you a copy of it. What's interesting to me about that is very cryptid and mysterious. But for my brother, half brother, for not finishing all of high school. Like, I think his last year of education was 7th or 8th grade. He was very articulate and had very great handwriting, was very smart. So like through the years, my sister and I had very different ways of approaching my brother because she was older and she remembered a lot of the really, really scary trauma stuff, so she was like, "I don't even have a half brother." For me, though, I was the one that, I saw him at the state hospital a few times, or I'd go to the halfway houses and bring him hats and coats and gloves and things like that, which I learned he would always trade for cigarettes or whatever, but I tried, I tried my best. Um, but the letter he left was like, he talks about his hall of memories and really kind of cryptid, and it makes me wonder, and this is something I'm very sensitive to even as a UFO investigator, is mental illness and how that impacts. Like, just because you might have a mental illness doesn't negate the fact that you might have some paranormal experiences in your life. And, back in the day, they would lock you up and institutionalize you, but maybe he was connected into something. Maybe he was having real experiences, you know what I'm saying? So I'm very sensitive
Sure.
to that, and I have been throughout this time, because I'm not saying that people don't hallucinate, but you really have to be delicate with how you handle those, cases.
Yeah, absolutely. If they were talking to someone, and I'm former law enforcement, we would routinely have to go to a lot of calls for domestic disturbances or even a mental health issue. And a lot of times, they would like dismiss what these people were saying, what they were seeing, what they were experiencing. A lot of people would dismiss it, but I'm thinking like, what if there's a shred of truth? What if they're just seeing, just like you said, the thin spot? What if they're able to see just the other side of it? Um,
Mhm,
Real quick, I went to a reported burglary one night. I was the only one available to go at the time. And when I got there, the elderly gentleman said that someone had broken into his house and he was sitting under his table. And I walked in, I searched the house, and he said, "Well, okay, he's in the kitchen. I'm going to show you where he's at." And he kept showing me he's under the table. And I kind of started feeling a little weird vibe there. Not just that I didn't see anything, but he was so convinced that he saw it. So I checked the house. I assured him everything was okay. I left. Next night, we got the same call, and I volunteered to go back. I had kind of developed a rapport with this elderly gentleman, and he would say, "Now he's sitting on my couch." And the whole time, but everything else about this man was normal. Everything was, I mean, he was alert. He was very articulate, but there was just that one thing. He kept seeing someone he thought was breaking into his house. And I always wondered, is he seeing something that, we don't see? But I mean, the Department of Human Services eventually came in and talked to him, but he still held to his story that he's not crazy. He doesn't have any issues, but someone keeps walking through the wall and sitting in his chairs and under his couch, or walking through the house like a shadow person almost. And I always wondered about that.
yeah. That's something I definitely experienced, during the ranch years at my home in Englewood. It's Centennial now, but back in the day, it was Englewood, Colorado. I had these tall shadow figures in my room, and I always slept with Big Sister. Big Sister was with me until I turned 11, and then she moved to Gillette, Wyoming. But those years at the ranch, I did not sleep alone in my room. I had to sleep with Big Sister, and we pushed the bed to the side of the wall so it can only get at me from these two angles, because it would either, be standing here or in the doorway or at the foot of my bed, and they were often in pairs of two. One time I saw three in my room, and it was terrifying. These were tall, dark, shadowy figures, and this is something I don't talk a lot about, but something I learned for season one of Beyond Skinwalker. So when they film a 44-minute episode, you're filming for a week. Okay. And you kind of get comfortable with the cameras being around and all that. And what's interesting is how that all came to be. Right before COVID hit, I left a note in the owner's box. I didn't know if they knew anything about the history of their property. I didn't know anything about the people that live there now. I was curious. So I'm like, hi, my name's Katie, kind of explained how I was connected, blah, blah, blah. And then COVID hit and shut us down. And I wasn't going to tell them all the scary stuff over the phone. So the next thing you know, 2 years later, I get a call from the History Channel. Hey, we're doing the show Beyond Skinwalker. Would you be willing to meet the family for the first time on camera? Camera's rolling. So when you see that episode on season 1, that's legit. That's the first time I'm back. And so we're sitting in the garage and we're, sharing, what I went through. Greg at the time is Greg, his wife who passed away after season 1, Chris, and their daughter Nicole. And they're sharing pictures of the ranch when they first bought it, how I remembered it. Because when I got there, I knew the house was in the same spot. I remembered the tree. I remembered the silo. I remembered so much, but the house looked different. And he's like, well, here's why. Here's what it looked like when we bought it. We added an addition out to the left and out to the right and to the front, and we added new siding. But the original house was within their additions, right? But while cameras are rolling, he said, when we bought this house, behind the ranch house in the Ponderosa Pines, they found a sacrificial cradle and like occult carvings in the trees and occult stickers in the windows on the house. So there was occult activity going on the ranch property. I'm kind of having really scary memories in real time with cameras rolling and having a very visceral effect. And I just said, I don't want this on film. I don't want this on camera. I don't want this out there. And they were very respectful. But later that night, when we got back to the hotel in Castle Rock, they pulled me aside and they said, we just want you to know that History Channel won't touch that stuff. They don't like going
Wow.
religious. They don't want to talk the occult. You're fine. But for me, that's always been a question mark. And I feel like my mom's boyfriend at the time, Jack, who he never ended up leaving Betty, but Jack, right after the ranch years, when they abandoned the ranch because it got too intense, so they left. He became a Aurora police officer, and he was, no offense, Jack, but he was a little nerdy. He kind of had his briefcase and his Vespa, and his pens in his pocket. He was that kind of guy. So I feel like the occult activity probably came from John Duke, that mysterious character, and perhaps Betty when she was with him, because those two were dating. I feel like that might have come from there. And I say that because there were a few letters from Betty in Leo Sprinkle's archives, and there were some symbolisms, and she talked about speaking Latin and some other little clues that might
Interesting.
speak to the occultism. And I'm like, okay, well, if that was going on, did they open up a doorway or a gateway or a portal that left the door open for some of these strange activities to occur, and they still occur? So, for example, when I wanted to go to Vernal, Utah, and visit the Blind Frog Ranch. So I did. I with Dwayne and that those cool guys. They were cool. So we go to Blind Frog Ranch, and the big thing I wanted to feel was the energy, because I know what it feels like to be on Rocky Mountain Ranch. Did it feel the same way at the Blind Frog Ranch? And I have to tell you, it did not feel the same. It was
Hmm.
much lighter at Blind Frog. And there's areas and pockets still to this day. Tony and I could be driving around Elbert County, and there's certain areas where the energy just shifts. And you're like, okay, there's something not right here. And you can really feel it. I'm sure you've been on investigations where you can just feel something's off. That's
I
what it
have.
feels like. Yeah, that's what
And,
it feels like.
and I'm starting to take notes now on the side, and I'm doing it like, old man with my pen here. But no, yeah. I mean, look at the Jack Parsons, right? The JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the guy who helped us with rockets and everything. Look at the occult background that he has and what they tried to bring to light. When they were like doing some kind of ceremony or ritual out in the deserts, maybe New Mexico, I think. But he was very heavily involved in the cult, yet he was also heavily involved in our space program, basically.
Yeah.
It's it's
The more
it's
I'm researching that, the more prevalent that is becoming. That connection. I'm like, okay, what is that about? And does it open up things that they can't close? And that's the thing too. And for your viewers and your listeners, you need to be careful when you call in anything, whether you're ghost hunting or because we don't know who or what we're dealing with, you know. Now, let's switch gears a little bit because this for me personally was one of the more interesting things. So when I go to the archives and I have stacks of papers here, but I want to just share with you the image of, so in the reports on the Rocky Mountain Ranch, there were 2 types of ETs that were seen there, supposedly. I never saw them that I'm aware of, but they reported seeing the blonde, blue-eyed Nordics, and then what Paul Giamatti, I did his show and he named them the Tubby guys, and the name kind of stuck. So this was the original drawing in the file of the Tubby guy, okay? That was seen on the ranch. Very long, spindly arms, heavy brows, wrinkles, not the big wraparound almond eyes like you typically see. So years ago when I first got this, the very beginning of my investigation, I kind of hid it in the drawer. I didn't publicly put it anywhere. I was like, this is really interesting. I haven't seen anything quite like that. Fast forward, and I invite this guy here. He wrote this book called Flashbacks. Okay. And at the time I was the guest speaker coordinator for MUFON. And I thought, well, I'll invite Sean to talk about his book. In this book, he claims that his property was in Castle Rock. Well, turns out his property was in Franktown, which is only 14 minutes away from where the ranch is, or 14 miles. So his property is 14 miles away from the Rocky Mountain Ranch. I'm sitting in the 3rd row watching his presentation, and up pops this. Okay.
Wow.
This guy right here is the ET he saw on his property. He said these tubes in the neck come out. So look at the eyes, look at the heavy brow, look at the wrinkles. I mean, crime scene, right? Pretty close. But then he pops this picture up with the tubes out. This was, he saw this entity in the tree. And I thought, okay, 14 miles away, he encountered these guys in 1970. We encountered these guys in 1975. But come on, they're pretty darn close. So that keeps me going. See, did they do MK Ultra stuff there too? Or is something else going on? See, this is what always happens to me, Paul. I think I'm leaning towards the military Black Axis projects, but then something like this happens, which makes me question, or is it something else? So then the question became, which came first, the chicken or the egg? How long did the phenomenon start and when did it start? And do I have any evidence of that? And in researching the property, it used to be the Mulligan homestead or the Mulligan Ranch. And I found an article online about Dick Mulligan. And Dick Mulligan was born on the Rocky Mountain Ranch property. And he was an Irish man from Kiowa. And later in his life, Dick Mulligan became the caretaker for Winter Park Ski Resort up here in the Rocky Mountains. And in the article, it said that Dick Mulligan was known for bold exaggeration and the gift of gab. And I'm thinking if he was born and raised on that property, I don't think he had a bold exaggeration. I think he was trying to tell people what the heck was going on. And even, before 1970, there were reports of orbs flying on and off the property and other things happening that predated the military presence. So it's my belief that the military came out there because things were happening and they were trying to explain it or harness or weaponize or whatever the heck they do, the phenomenon that was active there because of the thin spot.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I'm still thinking about the whole Jack Parsons thing in the JPL. And I mean, because the drawing that you showed me now, supposedly or reportedly, Jack Parsons, who he did the ritual with, they may have, or an occult ritual actually, they may have brought forth a creature they called Lamb, which was, So and
somebody said that's very similar to this one right here.
Yeah, it was what we kind of would consider like a gray alien today, but very well could be a demonic entity, honestly. For,
Mhm.
or
And then
whatever's
you have the
whatever's on the
shadow
other side.
figure. Yeah. No, somebody actually said that to me that, "Hey, um, that looks like lamb." So maybe it is both then. Maybe they opened up something unwitting, not knowing that it was negative, and that's certainly like, for me, people ask, "Katie, what do you think about disclosure and, everything that's happening now, and will we see that?" And I'm one of the people that think that we'll never see disclosure, at least not from our government. There's too much liability with all these people and families and that were affected, soldiers, liability issues, and things that perhaps they don't even understand that they messed with, opened up, and now they can't close it. So I don't think we're ever going to hear the complete truth about any of these programs from even maybe into the late 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many theories and side theories that you could go into, and I I, I agree with you. I don't think we'll ever see it. I mean, I'm thinking if you look back, especially with Hitler and all of the stuff, it's very well known that Hitler was into the occult, and Raiders of the Lost Ark might as well have been a documentary. I mean, he was actually sending people out there trying to find these anything occult that he could find that would help him gain world domination. And I think with an under Operation Paperclip, when we brought a lot of their scientists over here, we brought a lot into this country, especially with the Dr. Joseph Mengele and some of the MK Ultra experiments. I think a lot of that came with them when and they want to be in
I agree.
power, and it's just they'll stop at nothing to have the upper hand, especially if it's in the etheric world or spiritual world. They're going to do what they can to get the upper hand in that world as well as here just to stay in control. That's the
Oh,
way that
I
I think.
agree.
So,
It's interesting you brought up that you thought it was a documentary because in 1977, so this was like 75, 76, 77, I'm experiencing all the secrets and hush hush. Me and my sister, we actually invented a little secret language between the two of us so we could talk about it, kind of like Pig Latin. It's kind of I could still do it to this day. But while all that's going on, a movie comes out called Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
yeah.
And I thought it was a documentary because they had the
Oh, wow.
cattle mutilation and all the strange orbs and the toys, all the paranormal. I was living that at the time. And I kind of joke about it now. I'm like, I thought everybody was living that kind of life, but apparently not. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, and then the other phenomenon out there too, which I think is important to touch on, are these mysterious helicopters. And if you go to my website, Katie Page, and it's PAIGE .net, or you can go to RockyMountainRanchResearch.org and you can contact me through there. I'll send you this. It's a free PDF. I'll send it to you for free because it's really interesting to read. But there are accounts of all these mysterious helicopters, and it was studied by Project Stigma. So one time I believe I was in where was I? Wasn't Laughlin. Yeah, it was Laughlin. I was at a conference speaking, and Richard Doty happened to be there. Now, Richard Doty is a disinformation officer. And so I had two questions for Richard. And what's really weird, talk about like synchronicities or the paranormal happening, uh, I kind of cornered him, and I had my cell phone in my hand, and I didn't do it on purpose, but it recorded him. And I had my phone down here, not knowing it was recording. So I have the recording of it.
Sure.
But it's interesting because his body language, he was holding some books like this, walking, do, do, do. And I'm like, hey, Richard, I have a couple questions for you about the Rocky Mountain Ranch. And he does this. Okay.
Interesting.
And he goes, "Oh, we were just talking about your," he goes, "We were just talking about your presentation. We thought it was really interesting." I don't know who "we" is. And I said, "Well, I have two questions for you. I want to know if because I believe he came in right around 76, 77. I said, "Were you aware of the Rocky Mountain Ranch property in Kiowa?" And he goes, "Yes, we were." Okay, why? That's weird. And I said, "What's with the what's with these helicopters?" Because there's newspaper articles. These blacked out choppers at the time. You would see them flying in and around mutilation sites, but with strange looking pilots, but they were also silent. So I'm like, did we have silent copters back then? But they were menacing young girls. So there's some articles I found. Actually, I got it from Bill Waugh's widow. She had a whole stack of newspaper articles that she let me take home and scan. And you can see a lot of them on my website, by the way. They're there for you to look at. But I'm like, why were these helicopters menacing young kids on ranches? And he said to me, it was a diversion. In other words, pay attention to this over there because something else is going on over there that we don't want you to notice. So he admitted to that. He's also the one who told me to send this FOIA for the two A7D interceptors that crashed out there. And we'll get into this because this is a cool part of the case. And he also said, if you want to know more information, you should send a FOIA to the Agricultural Department of the United States Air Force, which I haven't done yet, and I keep meaning to do it. But this was in the reports from the ranch. And as you can see, a lot of it's redacted out. But in Dr. Leo Sprinkle's reports, look at this one. Dr. Leo said that 2 A7D interceptors were scrambled out of Buckley Air Force Base in pursuit of a UFO. So I'm like, and then they crashed. Both pilots ejected, both pilots survived. So I sent this and I got the report back. It happened on November 11th, 1975. What's interesting about this is one of the causes of the crash is supposedly it was an instructor and a student. The instructor misidentifies the beacon light of another aircraft, which they never identify. 8 of the instructor's instrumentation panels go out and are inoperative. So he has to illuminate his cockpit with something it says in the report. So the instructor hits the tail of the student and both go into a spin. So I started researching November 11th, 1975. I come across a report out of Falcon Bridge, Ontario, and it was November 11th, 1975. There's numerous unidentified aircraft seen on radar. Military men and women are seeing it with their eyes, so are police officers and civilians. So they're watching these anomalous things on aircraft or on radar. They finally decide to scramble 2 F-106 Delta Darts out of Selfridge, Michigan, over the Great Lakes. So they're in pursuit of these anomalous hits on the radar. The pilots never claimed to see anything with their eyes, but the Air Force admits scrambling these jets after these unknown UAPs, okay? So then I'm at Contact in the Desert, and I'm talking to Travis Walton. And he goes, you know what else happened November 11th, 1975? Right after midnight, he was returned from his abduction experience. You know what else happened November 11th, 1975? The Edmund Fitzgerald goes down.
Really?
So all of these things are happening across the country on November 11th, 1975. Now, I'm a person who loves documents and archives, and where they have Dr. Leo Sprinkle's archives in Laramie, Wyoming, which anybody can go to, and I highly recommend doing it. And if you can't do that, go to Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and go to the National UFO Historical Record Center. But Richard Haynes also has his collection at the Heritage Center in Laramie. Richard Haynes specifically really took an interest in pilot reports, commercial pilots, military pilots, civilian pilots. In his collection at the archives, if you need convincing that there's something to UAP, UFOs, just go visit his collection because it's really organized. And I have to tell you, so I immediately pulled November 11, 1975. I was not aware that the whole month of October, and it kind of stops right at November 11th, there was a huge wave of pilot sightings across the country of UFOs. Commercial pilots, all sorts. I'm like, holy smokes, I had no idea. So that was going on, why they were scrambling jets over Rocky Mountain Ranch, and they had that crash. And interestingly enough, too, like 2 years ago, I was able to pull up that particular crash and get some information online about it. Now you do it, there's nothing. It's like been scrubbed. So thankfully I have this report, and I found the original newspaper articles in the archives and stuff, but I can't find it online anymore, which
Man,
is
that's
very
wild.
mysterious to me. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
See, I'm glad you're doing the deep dives on a lot of this stuff. A lot of people, they just hear like the story played on the weekly news behind the X-Files music. They just hear the one story that everybody makes fun of, but they don't really take the time to look and dig, like, as deep as you do. I'm glad we have researchers like you that will take the time to dig deep and find, the facts about the like all the scrambles and the flight or the radar and the instrument notations and everything. It's just great that you're doing that. And real quick about Travis Walton. Um, I met him once here in Nashville. And did you know the state director for MUFON from Nashville? Her name was Angelia Shear. Did you?
I did. Yeah, I knew her.
My goodness. What? Yeah, I had just met her and we were like, she was great, honestly. And
It was great.
she invited me to just a quiet, quaint little get together at her place up in Nashville, and there was Travis Walton. And
Did he have his guitar?
you know what he did? I have pictures. I was playing a little bongo drum. We sat down in the living room, and he loves country music, loves to play his guitar, and we sat there and just played some music. It was great, but man, I found him to be so genuine and credible, and he told us his story that night. And I'm no expert, but I have been trained in like interview and interrogation techniques, and just being. I have a good BS meter, but man, he was on point, and I felt no deception out of him. And after hearing him, it really made me want to dig deeper. There's something incredible happened to Travis Walton, and he's telling the truth about it.
I
But
agree.
I
I
did want
agree.
to. Yeah, a big shout out to Angelia Shear.
Yeah.
That's how I knew her.
Here's to you, Angelia. Yeah, we were soul
What
sisters, and then
I
boy,
really?
yeah, and
Well,
we had
that's
just met, not too long before she passed away, unfortunately. And immediately we had a connection and talked
yeah.
for a long time on the phone. So what a great loss to the community and to the world, losing her. Um, but what I wanted to say about Travis Walton, abduction is something that uh, yeah, people are always surprised to learn I'm a little bit more of a skeptic than I claim. Like I want, and maybe it comes from my half brother and not wanting to be labeled a certain way, or like I want proof, I want paper, I want documents, I want to know.
Yeah,
Um,
same
and
here.
maybe it comes from that a little bit, but when it comes to Travis Walton and abductions, I had a hard time with abductions, and it took me a lot of years to kind of go, is this a real phenomenon? And it came down to a few key questions. The first thing is, do you believe extraterrestrials have made it to our planet, period, whether it's interdimensional or they're traveling here in some craft? That's step one. And if you believe that that's true, if you answer yes to that, then it would make sense that abductions would occur. Because I think certainly we would want to do the same thing and learn and study other life forms on other planets. So, but, I feel like um, Travis Walton is one of those that was like, I always said he's like a haunted man. And I can remember you mentioned at the top of the show, I did the Mars program, which was before the case management system for MUFON and everything was, put online and digital. These were all the old fashioned paper reports from 1969 until the time they went to the digital realm. And I headed up the team um, called the Mars team, and it took 3 years to redact over 10,000 reports because we needed to get, locations, names. We didn't want MUFON getting sued from people if their information got out, medical information, things like that. And in the Mars file was Travis Walton's. There were like over 300 reports on the original Travis Walton case. And I was at a conference and Travis was there, and I'm like, "Hey, Travis, I just want you to know I came across your original reports in the MUFON database." And so at the time, I asked if I can give him to Travis, and there was this about it. I'm like, you know what? This is his case. It's his stuff. He's gonna get it. So we jump in Travis's truck. We go get a flash drive. I download him, give him to Travis. He spent all night that night in the hotel going over them. Next morning, he's in the lobby and he looks a little kind of down. I'm like, Travis, did you have time to look at the reports? And he's like, yeah. A lot of the reports in there were from Phil Klass. Phil Klass was
Oh,
a well-known debunker,
yeah.
and, so we sat on the couch and kinda talked a lot how he tried to tear him down, but I have to say, you know, getting to know Travis Walton and his case, and I think it's one of the top 3 most credible abduction cases in the world. So and I always said, yeah, he's been haunted and affected his whole life by it, just like I have in a different way, with this ranch. I mean, it's really changed our family's life forever, and I guess that's part of the drive for me. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. I'll never be able to have a lawsuit or anything like that. Like, if I find out our family was plucked out because of my half brother or other things and it's impacted our whole lives, like, people, you're messing with humans' lives if you're going to put them in these black access programs. It's really unfortunate that these things have happened to hundreds, if not thousands, of families.
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's yeah, there are, like you said, you got a top 3. I have a top 3, 4, 5. You know, you can
Mhm.
really tell. You just know out of
Yeah.
the out of the thousands of reports out there, there's just a few that just really stand out. And um, I'm 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 kind of a skeptic that wants to believe, but
Mhm.
I have to have hard proof. I almost want to see it for myself, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
I
be
want
careful what
proof.
you wish for.
Well, I don't know. I've wished for it for a long time. I've only you know I, I've never really seen anything like that. Not that I'm aware of, you know, but it's I have looked for sure, and I've been a lot of places hunting anything strange, paranormal, the cryptids, the definitely been watching the skies forever. Um, I've seen things I can explain, but I'm not going to call it ET right away. You know,
Right. What
w-
about
I would
ghosts?
I've heard personally. I have heard things. I've recorded some audible things that I can't explain, but you know, I want to try explain it away. When I go to a place, I do my best to find the absolute most logical reason for something happening.
Right.
I do
Well,
everything in my power to do that. And then
well,
if I
my advice to you on that would be to let that go a little bit. Like, so one thing you could do if you want to, like the CE5 protocols or that, you don't need to go through fancy protocols. You can do some deep meditation or the gateway tapes or whatever it is that kind of opens that connects you in. Because something I've learned, I really believe we as individuals play an important role in the phenomena itself. So first of all, you have to be open to it. It doesn't hurt to be trained in some sort of way. So there's this disassociation piece. So lately, you're hearing a lot about the nonverbal autistic kids and the psionics and things like that. Well, I feel like this happened to me when I had all that trauma as a kid. I disassociated a lot. My dad was a pretty violent alcoholic. And when you grow up in that environment with fires and my half brother axing things and breaking things, you learn to leave your body. When you have a near death experience, you disassociate. When you go and train formally with deep meditation or the gateway tapes, you learn to disassociate. And I think when we do that, we connect into something else. And once you're trained in that, if you just kind of open the door to the possibilities and try not to be so, because I'm the same way. I want to logically explain everything, but you have to really let that go. And you can go outside and you can do it either in your head or verbally, but you can just talk to whatever's out there and say, I really need a sign. I want you to show me that you're here. And I've had very good, you know, results. And what I'll get are just these like a flash, and they'll always be on point. Like, let me know you're around, and it'll be like, here I am, and then it'll go again. And thankfully I'll be like, Tony, did you see that? And he'll boom, there it is. One time when we were out there in interviewing the family of that CIA agent out there in oh, what is the name of the town? Pioneer Town, California. It was in Pioneer Town, California. There wasn't a lot of people there. We did the interview and we ended up staying there in Pioneer Town. It was a beautiful night. The stars were out and there were these hammocks where we were staying, and we're like, let's just go lay in the hammock and stargaze. So we went to do that, and you could hear dogs in the distance. You can hear vehicles, just the, bug sounds and things like this. This is the only time I have ever experienced the cone of silence. So that was happening. I'm laying in the hammock. I was putting out that mesh and I get a flash. And then I get a flash. I'm like, Tony, third flash. So he sees the third flash. Right then, everything. I mean, you couldn't hear a sound. Not a dog, not a car, not a bug. It was the weirdest, uneasy feeling I've ever had. And we're going, like, but what was really strange is when the sound came back, it was like somebody going like this, slowly turning up the sound. And all of a sudden we heard like, woo, 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 woo. And we're like, okay, we're going back. It was so freaky. That's the only time I've experienced the cone of silence, was out there in Pioneer Town,
Wow.
California. Yeah.
Is that what they
So,
call? Is that what some call the Oz effect, or is that
yeah,
something
the Oz effect.
Oz effect sort? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Whoa. That was
I
pretty
would
intense.
I would think as far as feeling wise. I mean, I was hiking North Alabama on. I think I was near Monsanto National Park, but I was waiting on some. I was setting up camp. I had some buddies coming up later, and I don't know. I was gathering firewood and just setting up camp. I was completely by myself, and I all of a sudden felt like I was being watched, and then I got this overwhelming sense of dread, and I felt like something really major was about to happen. So I grabbed my sidearm and I put my back to a tree and I just sat there for a minute, just waiting for whatever to come out. But it just and it like you said, it got quiet. The forest just went eerily quiet. It was still, and
Yeah.
then I kept looking around. I was ready to go, and it was like all of a sudden, it just passed. Nothing happened the rest of the time. I mean, they showed up. I told them about it. They thought I was, just scared, but or just I don't know. It was a really weird. It's probably the weirdest thing that's happened to me in the woods. But yeah, it was just odd.
Yeah. Until you
But
experience it, I'm like, oh, that's what they're talking about. It was bizarre. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, Katie, I know I could sit here and I could listen to you talk all night. Um, I, yeah, because we're you and I are both of the same mind that all of this stuff is connected, and it could go on forever. We could go in so many different tangents,
Mhm.
talking about the cryptids, the paranormal, the spiritual side, the MK Ultra side. Is it? I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but I would definitely love to have you back again at some point. If when I
Absolutely.
know you're very busy.
Well, I'll make you
Um,
a deal. So, at Contact in the Desert this year and at the MUFON Symposium, I have been researching for over 8 years a little lesser known part of the Roswell incident. And there
really?
was a brigadier, yeah, there's a Brigadier General Arthur Exon who said that one of the Roswell bodies ended up in a mortuary outfit in Denver. And so for 8 years, I've been doing documents and digging on that. And I'll just say it involves a federal judge, the Mason Lodge, the Eisenhowers, the Nixons. Uh, yeah, it runs deep, and so I will be revealing that this year in May, at the end of May, at Contact in the Desert. Just putting all the information. I actually just did an interview with Don Schmidt, who was, he's been really encouraging me to go down this path, and I have. I think I know where the little body is, and things like that. So I'll
Wow.
come and just talk about this case with you and your audience, and because I really need, at some point, it's a crossroads that we all get to, where you research and you dig, and at some point you need to start sharing it with others. And I've been a little hesitant, because it's Roswell. It's the biggest thing, and I am a little afraid to put it out there. But you know knowing that Don Schmidt is like, yeah, you're putting all these pieces together, and I have, the interviews and talk about another thing that happens to experiencers or people that dig into these high strangeness kind of phenomenon, whether it's ghost cryptids or UFOs. Synchronicities start to happen in your lives. And one of the biggest synchronicities in my life happened while I was investigating the Denver Roswell body. And so this body at a mortuary outfit called Olinger's, this body sat there for decades where they stored the chairs in the back and had a hold. A judge had a hold on this body for decades, who turned out to be the crash retrieval specialist and infectious disease specialist for the country. And that's a whole other thing. But so
Wow.
my mom at the time, she's no longer with us, but at the time she was living at an assisted living facility here in Denver. And she asked me to come do a presentation for all the folks at the home. She called it the home. So I put together a PowerPoint presentation called UFOs 101, and I had a wonderful night with these people. And at the end, I just started talking about the Denver Roswell body case and, the federal judge who had a hold on this body. And the woman goes, "Sherm, his widow's on the 5th floor. You want me to go get her?" You
Oh
are
boy.
kidding me. So I got to do 2 interviews with the federal judge's widow,
Amazing.
Annette. Her name's Annette. And what I learned from Annette, which I'll be sharing, is mind-blowing. So just synchronicities with this particular case over and over and over again. And I think it's sort of like telling me, yep, this information needs to be put out in the world. So I'll be happy to come back and share all of that research with all of you.
I would love that. And if I
Yeah.
can make my way out, I may see you at the Contact in the Desert.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to one, but no,
It's a good one to go to. I mean, you're just
yeah,
running. There's so much to see and do, and bring your wife there. I mean, it's just fun. It's a good way to network more than anything else.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. And I think with this year and maybe the next year is going to be very interesting. I think a lot of things are going to start coming to light, I guess.
Yeah.
I think so. And but
Including the
no,
little Roswell body.
no, yeah, one of the biggest lights. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I can't wait. But hey, really, seriously, thank you for sharing your time with me and us. And it's been an honor. Um,
Thank you.
I can't wait to have you back on and hear about the Denver body. So
All right, awesome. And I'd be
that
amiss too. Tony Angiola and I just redid the Snippy the Horse case. So this is available
yeah.
on Amazon, but it's the original case. So check that out as well. And that's another thing we can come back on and talk about because
Yeah, I know there's so much to do, but yeah, please tell everyone how they can contact or not contact you, but find you or, get any kind of information out of your cases or your research. Just tell anybody about yourselves.
right. You can go to KatiePaige.net, or you could go to Rocky Mountain Ranch Research.org. Also, you can tune into the Trifecta Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. live. That's Mountain Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. And that's on YouTube. You can find information on the Rocky Mountain Ranch YouTube channel. I also have my channel there. Feel free to like and share and subscribe that. And if you can make it out to Contact in the Desert or the MUFON Symposium, I'll be out there this year as well.
And where's that going to be?
The MUFON Symposium is in Cincinnati, and of course, the Contact in the Desert is out in Indian Wells, California.
All right. All right. Sounds good. And I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping myself. So, guys, thank you for watching tonight and listening. I am on Spotify and other platforms, but please like and share. I'm on YouTube as well, the Mysterious Huntsman channel. And if I just put out my new website, themysteriousHuntsman.com, I even have some merch on there for anybody that might want to put my face on their shirt. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we will talk soon.